The great hall of Vorthak Prime Station buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from 12 different alien species sat in a circle, their various forms creating strange shadows under the dim lighting. Ambassador Cleith stood at the center, his 4 arms trembling slightly as he looked at each face around him. "My friends," Cleith began, his voice carrying the weight of deep concern, "we must speak of the humans." A few delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Rillick representative, a tall creature with silver skin, made a dismissive sound. "The soft pink ones? What threat could they possibly pose?" Cleith's large eyes fixed on the Rillick delegate. "That is exactly what the Rillick Consortium thought 3 years ago. Where are they now?" The room fell silent. Everyone knew the answer. The once mighty Rillick Consortium no longer existed as a military power. "Let me tell you what I witnessed," Cleith continued, moving slowly around the circle. "It began when the humans first came to our galaxy. 2 of them arrived at this very station. Their names were Hyunwoo and So Young. They looked so harmless, so eager to please." The ambassador paused, remembering that first meeting. The humans had been polite, almost shy. Hyunwoo had worn simple clothes and spoke softly. So Young had smiled often and brought gifts from their homeworld called Earth. They seemed like children compared to the powerful aliens around them. "The humans wanted to trade," Cleith said. "They offered strange things from their planet: music, art, stories, and something they called coffee. The consortium laughed at them. They thought these soft creatures would be easy to control." The Rillick delegate's face darkened, but he said nothing. "At first, everything went well," Cleith continued. "The humans were good traders. They were honest and fair. They even helped settle disputes between other species. Many of us began to like them." Cleith stopped walking and faced the group. Then the consortium decided to teach them a lesson. They said the humans were getting too comfortable, too confident. They needed to learn their place in the galaxy. The room was completely quiet now. Even the usual sounds of the station seemed muted. "A human merchant ship was traveling through Rillick space," Cleith said. "It carried trade goods and a crew of 25 humans. The ship's name was New Dawn, and it was commanded by a young man named Min-ho." The ambassador's voice grew, softer. Min-ho was Hyunwoo's younger brother. He was only 28 years old. He loved to explore new worlds and meet new people. The crew loved him because he always shared his profits with them fairly. Several delegates looked down at their hands or feet. They had heard rumors about what happened next. "The consortium attacked the New Dawn without warning," Cleith said. "They destroyed it completely. All 25 humans died, including Min-ho. The consortium then sent a message to the human embassy. They said it was a lesson about respecting stronger species." The ambassador closed his eyes for a moment. "I was there when Hyunwoo received the news." He went very still. So Young started crying, but Hyunwoo just stood there like a statue. When I tried to offer my sympathy, he looked at me with eyes that seemed empty. Cleith began walking again, his steps slow and measured. The humans asked for a meeting with the consortium leadership. They wanted to discuss compensation for the attack. The consortium agreed, thinking the humans would beg for mercy or offer tribute. "But that meeting never happened," said the Trilox. "Delegate, a small creature with large ears." "No," Cleith confirmed. "The humans suddenly left the station, all of them. They packed their embassy and departed within 6 hours. They said they needed time to consider their response." The Rillick delegate finally spoke. "They ran away. It proved they were cowards." Cleith turned to face the silver-skinned alien directly. "Is that what you still believe, even after what happened to your military?" The Rillick's confidence seemed to fade a little. "For 6 months, we heard nothing from the humans," Cleith continued. "Their ships stopped coming to our ports. Their traders disappeared from the markets. Many species thought they had given up and returned to their home system in shame." The ambassador moved to a large window that showed the stars outside. "The consortium grew bolder during those months. They attacked 3 more human ships that wandered into their territory. Each time they sent the same message about knowing their place. Then came the day we now call the Silent Hour," Cleith said, his voice barely above a whisper. Every delegate in the room knew about the Silent Hour. It had become a legend told in hushed tones across the galaxy. I was in my office when the IOB reports started coming in, Cleith said. At exactly the same moment, every single Rillick military installation in the galaxy went silent. Their space stations, their battle fleets, their planetary defense systems, everything stopped working, at once. The ambassador turned back to face the group. But here is what made it truly terrifying. The humans had not touched a single civilian target. Rillick hospitals, schools, farms, and homes were completely untouched. Only military targets were affected. How? Asked the Zephyrian delegate, a creature covered in blue fur. We still do not know for certain, Cleith admitted. Some say the humans had been infiltrating Rillick systems for months. Others believe they used some kind of computer virus. A few think they had help from other species who feared the consortium. Cleith walked back to the center of the circle. What we do know is this. The humans had planned everything perfectly. They knew exactly where every Rillick military asset was located. They knew how to disable each system without harming civilians. And they executed their plans simultaneously across thousands of light years. The room was so quiet that the delegates could hear the hum of the station's life support systems. Within 24 hours, the Rillick Consortium's military might was completely destroyed, Cleith said. But the humans were not finished. They sent one message to the Consortium's leadership. It was very short. The ambassador pulled out a small device and activated a hologram. The image showed a human face that most of the delegates recognized. It was Hyun Woo, but he looked different now. His eyes were cold, and his expression was hard. This is what he said, Cleith announced, and activated the recording. Hyun Woo's voice filled the room. You killed my brother and his crew. You said it was a lesson about respecting stronger species. We have learned this lesson well. We have now taught it back to you. Do not attack human ships again. Do not attack human people again. We will be watching. The hologram faded, leaving the delegates staring at empty air. That was 3 years ago, Cleith said. Since then, not a single human ship has been attacked by any military force. Not one. The humans have not threatened anyone else, but every species in the galaxy knows what they are capable of. The Rillick delegate stood up slowly. What are you asking us to do? Cleith looked at each face around the circle. I am asking you to remember this story. I am asking you to tell it to your people. The humans seem kind and peaceful, and perhaps they are. But they are also something else. What? Asked the Trilox delegate. They are patient, Cleith said. And when you hurt someone they love, their patience becomes the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. The cantina on Outer Rim Station was filled with smoke and the sound of alien voices. In the darkest corner, an old human woman sat alone at a table, nursing a drink that had gone warm hours ago. Her name was Jinne, and her weathered face told the story of decades spent traveling between the stars. At the bar, a group of young Zelton pirates laughed loudly as they planned their next raid. Their leader, a tall alien with green scales and sharp teeth, waved his claws in the air as he spoke. The human cargo ships are perfect targets, he boasted to his friends. They carry valuable goods but have weak defenses. The stories about human revenge are just tales to scare children. His companions nodded and agreed. They were young and had never seen real war. To them, humans were just another soft species to exploit. Jinne looked up from her drink. Her gray hair was tied back in a simple knot, and her clothes were the practical kind worn by people who worked with their hands. She had been listening to the pirates for the past hour, and finally, she could not stay quiet anymore. You boys should find different targets, she said, in a voice rough from years of breathing recycled ship air. The Zelton leader turned to look at her. His yellow eyes were full of mockery. Old woman, we do not need advice from a washed-up trader. Humans are weak. Everyone knows this. Jinne stood up slowly. She was not tall, but something in her manner made the other customers in the cantina pay attention. I have been flying between the stars for 40 years, she said. I have seen things that would give you nightmares for the rest of your life. Like what? Asked one of the younger pirates, trying to sound brave. Jinne walked over to their table and sat down without being invited. The pirates looked uncomfortable, but they did not ask her to leave. 20 years ago, I was hauling cargo through the Mordak system, she began. The Mordak Empire was powerful then. They controlled 50 worlds and had the strongest slave markets in the galaxy. The pirates knew about the Mordak Empire. Everyone did. They had once been one of the most feared civilizations in known space. The Mordak had just conquered a human colony world called New Sol, Ginny continued. It was a beautiful planet with mountains and forests. The humans there were farmers and artists. They had no weapons stronger than hunting rifles. She paused to take a sip of her warm drink. The Mordak attack was brutal. They killed anyone who fought back and enslaved the rest. About 50,000 humans were forced to work in the mining operations on the planet's moons. The young pirates shifted in their seats. This was not the kind of story they wanted to hear. Among the slaves were a man named Dong Hyun and his daughter Ye Jin, Jin-A said. Dong Hyun had been a teacher before the attack. His daughter was only 16 years old. She loved to paint pictures of flowers. "What does this have to do with us?" the Zelton leader asked, though his voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. "Everything," Jin-A replied. "Because 3 years later I watched the human response." She leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes, remembering. "I was delivering supplies to a Mordak space station when the human fleet arrived. At first, I thought it was a joke. There were only 12 human ships against the entire Mordak home defense fleet." 12 ships? Asked one of the pirates. 12, Jin-A confirmed. "Small ones, too. Nothing that looked dangerous. The Mordak. Commanders laughed when they saw them. They sent messages mocking the humans for attempting such a foolish rescue mission." Ginny opened her eyes and looked directly at the Zelton leader. That was when everything went dark. The cantina had grown quiet. Other customers were listening now, drawn by the intensity in the old woman's voice. "Every single Mordak ship just stopped working," Jin-A said. "Their engines died, their weapons powered down, their life support systems flickered off. One moment, they were preparing to destroy the human fleet, and the next moment they were drifting helplessly in space. That is impossible," said the Zelton leader, but his voice was not as strong as before. "I watched it happen from my cargo hold," Jin-A said. "But it was not just the ships. The space stations went dark too. Then the planetary defense systems. Within an hour, every piece of Mordak military technology in the entire system had simply stopped working." She took another sip of her drink. The humans had spent 3 years learning everything about Mordak technology. They had infiltrated their computer networks, studied their systems, and prepared a virus that could shut down anything the Mordak had built. The pirates looked at each other nervously. "But here is the part that still gives me nightmares," Jin-A continued. "The humans did not stop with one system. As I flew from world to world over the next few days, I got reports from across the galaxy. Every Mordak military installation, every warship, every defense satellite, all of them failed at exactly the same time." "The whole empire?" whispered one of the younger pirates. "The whole empire," Ginny confirmed. 50 worlds with no military protection. But the humans did not attack the civilian populations. Instead, they broadcast a message to every Mordak world. Jin-A stood up and walked to the window that looked out at the stars. The message was simple. Any Mordak who wanted to surrender could do so peacefully. Any Mordak who wanted to keep fighting could try. But they would have to do it without their technology. Most of them surrendered, she continued. But some of the Mordak leaders tried to organize resistance using older weapons and equipment. The humans dealt with them too, but not with violence. "How?" asked the Zelton leader. "They released all the slaves," Jin-A said simply. "Every single person who had been forced to work in Mordak mines, factories, and farms was suddenly free. And those freed slaves were very angry about how they had been treated. The pirates were completely silent now. I was on the Mordak homeworld when Dong Hyun and his daughter walked out of the mining complex," Jin-A said. "Ye Jin was 23 by then, and the years of slavery had changed her. But she was still alive, and she was free." Jin-A turned back to face the pirates. The Mordak Empire collapsed within a month, not because the humans destroyed it with weapons, but because they removed the foundation it was built on. No technology, no slaves, no fear. She walked back to the table and leaned down close to the Zelton leader. "Do you know what happened to the Mordak who had ordered the attack on New Sol?" The pirate shook his head. "Nothing," Jin-A said. "The humans did nothing to him directly, but his own people blamed him for the disaster. They threw him out of his palace and left him to beg in the streets. He died alone and forgotten, destroyed by the consequences of his own actions." Jin-A straightened up and looked at each of the young pirates. The humans did not need revenge because justice happened, naturally. When you build an empire on cruelty and oppression, removing the tools of oppression causes everything to fall apart. The Zelton leader swallowed hard. But surely not all humans are like this. They cannot all be so dangerous. You are right, Ginny said. Most humans are kind and peaceful people. Dong-hyun went back to teaching after he was freed. His daughter became an artist again. They forgave their captors and moved on with their lives. She paused and smiled, but it was not a warm smile. But there are other humans too. Humans who spend years planning and waiting. Humans who study their enemies and learn their weaknesses. Humans who can destroy an entire empire without firing a single shot. Jin'e finished her drink and set the glass down on the table. The question you need to ask yourselves is this. When you attack a human cargo ship, which kind of human will you be dealing with? The kind teacher like Dong-hyun, or the kind who brought down the Mordak Empire? She walked toward the door of the cantina, then stopped and looked back at the pirates one last time. Choose your targets carefully, boys. The galaxy is full of species you can rob without consequences. Humans are not one of them. After Jin'e left, the young pirates sat in silence for a long time. Finally, the Zelton leader spoke in a voice much quieter than before. Maybe we should look for different cargo ships to raid. His companions nodded quickly. They spent the rest of the evening drinking and talking about safer targets, but none of them could forget the story of the Mordak Empire and how it fell. Outside the cantina, Jin'e walked slowly back to her ship. She had told the truth, but not the whole truth. She had been more than just a witness to the fall of the Mordak Empire. She had been one of the humans who helped plan it, but that was a story for another time. The abandoned research station drifted silently through space like a metal ghost. Its once bright lights were dark, and its corridors were filled with the cold emptiness of death. Junseo floated through the main hallway, his helmet light cutting through the darkness as he searched for answers. Behind him, Dr. Vrextal moved more carefully. The alien scientist had 6 arms and a body covered in gray fur, but even his natural agility could not hide his nervousness. He had volunteered to come on this expedition to learn about Nexari technology, but now he was beginning to regret that decision. The power systems are completely dead, Junseo said through his suit radio. His voice was calm and professional, but Dr. Vrextal could hear something else underneath. A sadness that seemed to run very deep. How long has this station been abandoned? Dr. Vrextal asked, though he already knew the answer. 15 years, Junseo replied. Ever since the Nexari civilization collapsed, they moved deeper into the station, passing empty laboratories and silent computer terminals. The Nexari had once been the most advanced scientific civilization in the galaxy. Their research stations had been marvels of technology, capable of experiments that other species could barely imagine. Here, Junseo said, stopping at a door marked with Nexari symbols. The main data storage center. If there are any records left, they will be in here. The door was sealed, but Junseo had brought the right tools. After a few minutes of work, it slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, rows of data storage units lined the walls like sleeping giants. Dr. Vrextal helped Junseo connect his portable power unit to one of the storage systems. Slowly, lights began to flicker on, and ancient computers started to hum with life. Most of the files are corrupted, Junseo said as he worked at a terminal. But some of the final records are still intact. What kind of records? Dr. Vrextal asked, though part of him did not want to know. Junseo was quiet for a moment as he read through the files. When he finally spoke, his voice was very soft. They were working on biological weapons. The alien scientist moved closer to look at the screen. The Nexari text was difficult to read, but his translation device was working. What he saw made his fur stand on end. They were targeting humans specifically, Junseo continued. The research. Notes say they viewed Earth as a growing threat to Nexari scientific supremacy. Dr. Vrextal read more of the files, his horror growing with each line. The Nexari had spent years developing a plague that would only affect human genetics. They had tested it in secret laboratories, perfecting it until it was completely deadly to humans, but harmless to other species. They called it Project Clean Slate, Junseo said. The idea was to eliminate humanity quickly and quietly, then claim that humans had died from a natural disease. But they needed to test it, Dr. Vrextal said, reading ahead in the files. Yes, Junseo confirmed, and they found the perfect target. Junseo pulled up another set of files, these ones containing video records. The screen showed images of a beautiful world with blue oceans and green continents. Space stations orbited the planet like silver jewelry, and the surface was covered with gleaming cities. New Busan, Junseo said, a human research colony with 50,000 people, scientists, engineers, doctors, and their families. They were working on medical research and agricultural development. Dr. Vrextal watched as the video showed humans working in laboratories and walking through parks with their children. They looked happy and peaceful, unaware of what was coming. The colony's chief scientist was a woman named Eun-ji, Junseo said. His voice became even softer when he spoke her name. She was a xenobiologist who had spent her career studying alien diseases. Ironically, she was working on treatments for genetic disorders that affected Nexari children. The video files showed Dr. Eun-ji in her laboratory, surrounded by her research team. She was a small woman with kind eyes and gentle hands. In one recording, she was explaining her work to a group of young scientists, her face bright with enthusiasm. For helping others. The Nexari released their plague on New Busan without warning, Junseo continued. It spread through the air and water systems. Within 2 weeks, every human on the planet was dead. Dr. Vrextal felt sick as he watched the final recordings from New Busan. The videos showed empty streets and silent buildings. Bodies lay where they had fallen, and the once vibrant colony had become a tomb. But the Nexari made a mistake, Junseo said. They assumed no one would discover what they had done. They thought they could blame the deaths on a natural outbreak. What happened? Dr. Vrextal asked. Junseo activated another file, this one showing 3 human ships arriving at New Busan. The vessels moved slowly through the system, scanning the dead world and its silent space stations. The rescue mission arrived 1 day too late, Junseo said. They found only corpses. The screen showed humans in protective suits walking through the empty colony. They moved carefully, taking samples, and recording everything they found. In the lead was a man in a captain's uniform, his face grim behind his helmet visor. Captain Taemin, Junseo said. He was Yoonji's husband. Dr. Vrextal watched as Captain Taemin knelt beside a body in one of the laboratories. Even through the protective suit, it was clear that he was looking at someone he loved. His shoulders shook with grief, but his movements remained controlled and purposeful. The humans discovered the truth within hours, Junseo said. Yoonji's research notes contained detailed analysis of the plague. She had identified it as artificial just before she died. The next file showed Captain Taemin standing in the colony's main communications center. He had removed his helmet, revealing a face marked by terrible pain and cold determination. He sent one message to Nexari space, Junseo said. Just one. The recording activated, and Captain Taemin's voice filled the empty station. You killed our healers, he said simply. The people who work to save your children and cure your diseases. They died trying to help you. Now learn what our soldiers can do. The message ended, and the screen went dark. What did they do? Dr. Vrextal asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. Junseo pulled up more files, these ones showing records from Nexari worlds over the following months. The humans studied Nexari biology the same way the Nexari had studied theirs. But instead of creating a plague to kill Nexari people, they targeted something else. The files showed Nexari farms and food production facilities. At first, everything looked normal, but as the months passed, the images showed crops failing and livestock dying. They created a virus that attacked the bacteria essential to Nexari. Agriculture, Junseo explained. Without these bacteria, Nexari crops could not grow and their animals could not digest food. Dr. Vrextal stared at the screen in horror. The images showed Nexari worlds slowly starving as their entire food production system collapsed. But it was not immediate. Junseo continued. The humans gave the Nexari time to understand what was happening, time to realize that their own actions had caused this disaster. The final files showed Nexari leaders begging other species for food aid. Their proud scientific civilization had been reduced to depending on charity from the very species they had once looked down upon. The Nexari government collapsed within a year, Junseo said. Not from violence, but from the shame of what they had done and the consequences of their actions. Dr. Vrextal looked around the empty station with new understanding. That is, why this place was abandoned? Yes, Junseo confirmed. The Nexari people scattered across the galaxy, trying to rebuild their lives on other worlds. Some found work as teachers or engineers. A few even work for human colonies now, helping with research projects. And the humans? Dr. Vrextal asked. Did they forgive? Junseo was quiet for a long moment. Captain Taemin established a medical research foundation in his wife's name. It provides free treatment for genetic diseases in Nexari children, the same work that Yunji was doing when she died. Dr. Vrextal felt his legs go weak. They helped the people who killed them? The children did not choose to kill anyone, Junseo said simply. Yunji would have wanted them to be healthy and happy. As they prepared to leave the station, Dr. Vrextal asked one final question. How do humans do it? How do they plan such terrible revenge and then forgive so completely? Junseo looked out at the stars through a porthole. I think it is because they understand the difference between justice and cruelty. The Nexari leaders who ordered the attack on New Busan faced the consequences of their choices, but innocent people should not suffer for crimes they did not commit. They left the station in silence, carrying with them the story of how an entire civilization had destroyed itself through its own evil actions. Behind them, the empty corridors returned to darkness, holding their secrets and their warnings for anyone brave enough to seek them out. Dr. Vrextal never forgot what he learned that day. He went on to become one of the galaxy's leading experts on human psychology, and he always told his students the same thing. Humans will forgive almost anything, but they will never forget. And if you threaten what they love, their memory becomes the most dangerous weapon in the universe. The prison cell was small and gray, with walls made of thick metal that blocked all outside sound. Admiral Zephron sat on a simple bench, his once proud uniform replaced by plain prisoner clothes. His 4 eyes stared at the floor, and his tentacle-like arms hung limp at his sides. Across from him, Subin sat quietly with a recording device between them. She was a human woman in her 30s, with short black hair and the kind of calm expression that came from years of listening to terrible stories. Her job was to investigate war crimes, and she had heard many confessions from many different species. Tell me about Harmony Station, Subin said in a gentle voice. Admiral Zephron's eyes closed, and his whole body seemed to shrink. I was the most feared military commander in the galaxy, he said slowly. My fleet had conquered 40 systems. Kings and emperors would flee when they heard my name. That was before, Subin said. Yes, the Admiral agreed. Before I learned what real power looks like. Subin waited patiently. She had learned that silence was often the best way to get people to tell the truth. Harmony Station was supposed to be neutral territory, Admiral Zephron continued. It was a space habitat that provided shelter for refugees from across the galaxy. Any species, any background, any history. If they needed help, Harmony Station would take them in. The Admiral's voice grew bitter. I thought it made humans look weak. All that kindness, all that charity. It went against everything I believed about how the galaxy should work. Subin made a note on her tablet. How many people lived on Harmony Station? 100,000 refugees, Admiral Zephron said. Families who had lost their homes to war. Children whose parents had died in conflicts. Old people who had nowhere else to go. And 10,000 human aid workers who chose to spend their lives helping others. The Admiral stood up and walked to the small window of his cell. Outside, he could see the prison yard where other war criminals spent their exercise time. The station director was a man named Wu Jin, he said. I had studied his file before the attack. He had been a businessman before he became a humanitarian. He gave up his wealth to build Harmony Station with his own money. Subin looked up from her notes. What made you decide to attack? Admiral Zephron turned away from the window. Pride, he said simply, and stupidity. My advisors told me that attacking a neutral humanitarian station would send a message to the humans. It would show them that their soft values made them vulnerable. What kind of message?" Subin asked. "That kindness was weakness," the Admiral said. "That helping others was a luxury they could not afford in a dangerous galaxy. I wanted to break their spirit by destroying something they cared about." Subin remained quiet, letting him continue. "Among the aid workers was a doctor named Hye Wan," Admiral Zephron said. "She had saved thousands of lives during her career. When plague broke out on Trilox Prime, she spent 6 months there treating the sick. When the Zephyrian Civil War created millions of refugees, she organized medical relief efforts." The Admiral sat back down on his bench. "Dr. Hye Wan had personally saved members of my own species, hegemony soldiers who had been wounded in battle. She treated them the same way she treated everyone else, with skill and compassion." "But you attacked anyway," Subin said. "I attacked anyway," Admiral Zephron confirmed. "My fleet surrounded Harmony Station and demanded its surrender. Director Wu Jin tried to negotiate. He reminded me that the station was neutral territory and asked what we wanted." The Admiral's voice became very quiet. "I told him I wanted to teach the humans a lesson about the cost of weakness. Then I ordered my ships to open fire." Subin wrote down the Admiral's words exactly as he spoke them. She had heard many confessions, but this one was different. The alien's regret seemed genuine. "The station had no weapons," Admiral Zephron continued. "No shields, no defenses of any kind. It was simply a place where people lived and worked and tried to help each other. My fleet destroyed it in less than an hour." "All 110,000 people died?" Subin asked. "All of them," the Admiral confirmed. "Dr. Hye Wan was in the medical center when it was hit. Director Wu Jin was in the command center, trying to evacuate civilians until the very end. They all died because I wanted to prove a point about strength and weakness." Admiral Zephron put his head in his hands. "I thought I had won a great victory. I sent messages to every human world, telling them that this was what happened to species that chose kindness over strength." "What was the human response?" Subin asked, though she already knew the answer. "Nothing," Admiral Zephron said. "For weeks, there was nothing. No threats, no demands for revenge, no military mobilization. I began to think that I had been right, that destroying Harmony Station had broken their will to resist." The Admiral stood up again and began pacing around the small cell. "Then strange things started happening to our allies. Trade agreements were canceled. Supply contracts were terminated. Diplomatic relations were severed." Subin nodded. She had read the reports about what came next. "At first we did not understand what was happening," Admiral Zephron said. "The humans were not attacking anyone. They were not threatening anyone. They were simply withdrawing." "Withdrawing how?" Subin asked. "From everything," the Admiral said. "For decades, humans had been the galaxy's mediators. When species had disputes, they called human diplomats to help resolve them. When there were trade problems, human economists provided solutions. When there were medical emergencies, human doctors volunteered to help." The Admiral stopped pacing and looked directly at Subin. "I never realized how much the galaxy depended on human help until it was gone." "What happened to your empire?" Subin asked. "It fell apart," Admiral Zephron said simply. "Without human mediation, old conflicts between our member worlds started again. Without human economic advice, our trade systems collapsed. Without human medical support, diseases that had been controlled for years came back." The Admiral sat down heavily. The humans had spent generations building relationships, creating trust, establishing systems that helped everyone. When they withdrew all of that at once, civilizations that had been stable for centuries suddenly could not function. "How long did it take?" Subin asked. 6 months, Admiral Zephron said. 6 months for the entire hegemony to collapse into chaos. Member worlds turned against each other. Trade routes became battlefields. Planets that had been peaceful for generations were suddenly at war. Subin made more notes. "And the humans? They did nothing," Admiral Zephron said. "They did not attack our weakened worlds. They did not take advantage of our chaos. They simply watched as we destroyed ourselves." The Admiral's voice became filled with a different kind of pain. "Do you know what the worst part was? When refugee ships from our worlds reached human space, asking for help, the humans still took them in. They provided food, medicine, and shelter to the same people whose government had destroyed Harmony Station." Subin looked up from her tablet. "They helped their enemies. They helped innocent people who were suffering. Admiral Zephron corrected. They made it very clear that they held our leaders responsible for what happened, but they would not let civilians starve because of our mistakes. The Admiral walked back to the window. I am in this prison because my own former allies put me here. They blame me for provoking the humans and causing the collapse of our civilization. They were right to blame me. Do you regret what you did? Subin asked. Admiral Zephron was quiet for a long time. I regret everything, he finally said. I regret the people who died on Harmony Station. I regret the wars that started when our empire fell. I regret not understanding what true strength looks like. What does true strength look like? Subin asked. The Admiral turned to face her. It looks like Dr. Haiwan spending months on a plague world to save strangers. It looks like Director Wu Jin giving up his fortune to help refugees. It looks like humans taking in the children of their enemies and treating them with kindness. Paused and added quietly, it looks like having the power to destroy your enemies and choosing instead to let them destroy themselves through their own evil actions. Subin finished her notes and prepared to leave. Is there anything else you want to say? Admiral Zephron sat back down on his bench. Tell people my story, he said. Tell them that the humans did not defeat me with weapons or threats. They defeated me by being better than I was. They showed the galaxy what I really was. A cruel old fool who mistook violence for strength. As Subin left the prison, she thought about all the stories she had heard about human vengeance. This one was different from the others, but the lesson was the same. Humans could be the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because they were violent, but because they were good. And when good people were pushed too far, their response was more terrible than any weapon. Outside the prison, Subin looked up at the stars and wondered how many other species were learning the same lesson that Admiral Zephron had learned too. Late. Power without compassion was not strength, it was just cruelty waiting to destroy itself. The command center on Earth's orbital defense platform was filled with quiet tension. Screens showed star maps and ship movements from across the galaxy, and the soft hum of computers created a constant background noise. So Young stood before the main display, her hair now gray with age and her face marked by years of difficult decisions. Behind her, Hyunwoo entered the room carrying a data tablet. He moved more slowly than he had 20 years ago, but his eyes were still sharp and focused. The two old friends had worked together for decades, and they could communicate with just a look. The reports are confirmed, Hyunwoo said quietly. The Convergence has formed an official alliance, 15 species, including some we considered friends. So Young nodded without turning around. On the screen in front of her, red dots marked the positions of enemy fleets gathering at the edge of human space. How many ships? 2,000, Hyunwoo replied. Maybe more. They have been building this fleet in secret for months. So Young finally turned to face him. Her expression was calm, but Hyunwoo could see the sadness in her eyes. They think we have become too powerful. They think we are a threat to the rest of the galaxy, Hyunwoo corrected. The Convergence leaders have been spreading stories about human conquest and domination. They say we plan to rule all other species. Do we? So Young asked with a slight smile. Hyunwoo smiled back. If we did, would we be having this conversation instead of simply ordering them to surrender? A young officer approached them with another report. Director So Young, we have received a message from the frontier colonies. They are requesting permission to evacuate their civilian populations. So Young took the report and read it quickly. Among the colonies at risk was Bright Harbor, where her son Kyung-ho served as a defense coordinator. The colony had 30,000 people, including many families with young children. What does Kyung-ho recommend? So Young asked. He says the colonists want to stay and fight, the officer replied, but he is worried about the civilians if the Convergence attacks. Hyunwoo looked at the star map again. The Convergence fleet will reach our outer colonies in 6 days. If they follow their usual pattern, they will target civilian populations first to break our morale. So Young walked to another display that showed personnel files. She pulled up information about Nari, a young engineer who had been working on new defensive technologies. Nari was only 25 years old, but her innovations had already saved countless lives. Nari's shield generators are installed on most of our frontier colonies, So-young said. How effective will they be against a full fleet assault? They will buy us time, Hyun-woo said, but not much. The convergence has overwhelming numbers. So-young was quiet for a moment, thinking about her son and all the other young people who would be in danger when the attack came. Then she made her decision. Send a message to the convergence fleet, she said. Tell them I want to speak with their commanders. All of them? The young officer asked. All of them, So-young confirmed. And make sure the message reaches every species in the galaxy. I want everyone to hear what I have to say. 2 hours later, So-young stood alone in the communication center. The screens around her showed the faces of 15 different alien commanders, representing the species that had joined the convergence. Behind them, she could see the bridges of their warships, filled with weapons and soldiers ready for battle. I am Director So-young of the Human Defense Council, she began. I understand that you have concerns about human activities in the galaxy. The convergence leader, a tall reptilian creature with golden scales, spoke first. Humans have become too dangerous, he said. Your species has destroyed entire civilizations. You have made the galaxy fear you through violence and cruelty. That is not true, So-young said calmly. We have never attacked anyone who did not attack us first. We have never conquered worlds or enslaved populations. Every action we have taken has been in response to aggression against our people. UD. Destroyed the Rilek Consortium, accused another commander, a creature with multiple arms and black eyes. After they murdered my husband's brother and his crew, So-young replied. We gave them a choice to stop attacking our ships. They chose to continue. You brought down the Mordak Empire, said a third commander, after they enslaved an entire human colony and forced our people to work in mines until they died. So-young answered. We freed not just our own people, but every slave in Mordak space. The accusations continued for several minutes. The Nexari, plague, the hegemony collapse, every example of human aggression that had created their fearsome reputation. So-young answered each charge patiently, explaining the context and the human response. Finally, the reptilian leader grew angry. You can justify your actions all you want, but the result is the same. The galaxy fears humanity. That fear makes you too powerful to exist. So-young looked directly at him through the screen. So you have decided to attack us? We have decided to remove the threat you represent, the leader said. Starting with your frontier colonies. When your civilians are dead, perhaps the rest of humanity will understand that you are not as strong as you think. The communication screens went dark as the convergence commanders ended the call. So-young stood alone in the silence, thinking about her son and all the other people who would die if she could not find another way. Hyun-woo entered the room a few minutes later. The fleet is moving, he said. They will reach Bright Harbor in 5 days. Are our defenses ready? So-young asked. As ready as they can be, Hyun-woo replied. Nari has been working with Kyung-ho to coordinate the shield systems. They think they can protect the civilian shelters, but the colony itself will probably be destroyed. So-young nodded slowly. Send a message to all human colonies and worlds. Tell them what is coming. What should the message say? Hyun-woo asked. So-young walked to the window that looked out at Earth below. She could see the lights of cities and the movement of ships in orbit. All of this would be in danger if the convergence succeeded in their attack. Tell them that we offered peace, and it was rejected, she said. Tell them that we tried to explain our actions and were not believed. Tell them that we gave our enemies every chance to choose a different path. And? Hyun-woo prompted. So-young turned back to face him. Tell them that the time for mercy has ended. The convergence has chosen to threaten our children and our families. Now they will learn what happens when humans have nothing left to lose. Over the next 4 days, the galaxy watched as humanity prepared for war. But this time was different. From all the previous conflicts, there were no secret plans or hidden viruses. There were no careful infiltrations or patient schemes. Instead, the humans began to recall every favor they had ever done, every alliance they had built, every friend they had helped. Species that had benefited from human aid were quietly asked to remember those benefits. Worlds that had been saved by human intervention were reminded of their debt. The humans did not demand military support or ask for weapons. They simply asked their friends to remember who had helped them when they needed it most. On Bright Harbor, Kyung-ho worked with Nari to prepare the colony's defenses. They knew they could not stop the Convergence fleet, but they could make the attack cost more than the enemy expected. "My mother sent a message," Kyung-ho told Nari as they tested the shield generators. "She says we are not fighting alone." "What does that mean?" Nari asked. Kyung-ho smiled. "It means the Convergence is about to learn something about humans that they never understood." "What?" "That our greatest strength was never our ability to destroy our enemies," Kyung-ho said. "It was our ability to make friends with everyone else." On the 5th day, the Convergence fleet arrived at the edge of human space. They found something they had not expected. Hundreds of ships from dozens of different species, all positioned between the attackers and the human colonies. The reptilian leader opened a communication channel, his voice full of confusion and anger. "Why are you here? This conflict is not your concern." The response came from Admiral Cleeth, the same Vorthak who had once warned other species about human vengeance. "These humans saved my world from plague 20 years ago," he said simply. "I have not forgotten." Similar messages came from the other allied ships. Humans had helped them all at some point, stopping wars, providing medical aid, sharing technology, or simply being good neighbors. Now it was time to return those favors. The Convergence found themselves facing not just human defenses, but a coalition of grateful allies who remembered human kindness. The attack that was supposed to prove human weakness instead proved human strength. In the end, the Convergence fleet retreated without firing a shot. They had come to destroy an isolated enemy and found instead that humanity was surrounded by friends. The reptilian leader sent one final message to So Young before his ships departed. "This is not over. The galaxy will still fear you." So Young's response was broadcast across known space. "Let them fear us if they choose. But let them also remember that we have never been the ones who started these conflicts. We are simply the ones who end them." The why message became humanity's new reputation across the galaxy. They were still dangerous when threatened, still capable of terrible vengeance when pushed too far, but they were also the species that had earned the loyalty